Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Cruz.
This is Bryce Vine.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This
East.
is Sebastian Younger.
This is Daryl Aiden.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
This is Dr. Bob Greenberg.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hey, this is Robert Vera, author of A Warrior's Faith, and you're listening to The Break It Down Show.
And now, The Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Yes, we have Robert on the show. And, of course, I have Scott sitting with me, co-hosting. He's best-selling author of Echo and Ramadi. And we're about to have another great conversation with another person telling incredible, these warrior tales. I'm so glad. And, Scott, you were the one that really got me thinking about this. We're telling our tale in our time now instead of being crusty or gone. You know, like we're taking the moment right now to slow down and go, this is what it costs to do this war stuff, you know, so you want to protest, but there's actual people that go. This is what it means to do it, and I love that we're doing this now. So, thank you for telling the tale that you did. And gosh, just thanks for. I love doing this show. You know, like I love it.
You know what's important too is that because a lot of our listeners, we get a bunch of veterans on the show. Is what's so amazing about Robert, and Robert is, again, one of my favorite pen pals, and you've probably heard me say this, true confession. Robert and I have never sat down in a room like you and me, but we have this great relationship. We talk all the time. Robert actually likes to talk more than me. It's relief because I can just sit back and every time I'm on the phone with Robert, it's amazing because it's a little bit of therapy, it's a little bit of education, and it's a lot of wisdom. Robert's a civilian who's done amazing things in his life, but he shared this great story of our veteran community and of our warriors. And Robert, hey, it's always good talking to you, brother.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's great to have. I love talking with you, and we're like-minded. So, yeah. So, when I first read Scott's book, so I was, before it was launched, and before you press the button and launch a book, like, you're always like, oh man, is this going to go over well? I mean, you just don't know, right? And as soon as I read it, I was like, this is absolutely going to be a bestseller. There's no question about it. It had everything in it to make it a bestseller. It's a great story. But I'll tell you what, what I thought was much different about Echo and Ramadi than I thought about a lot of other books is that Scott actually, not that others don't, but Scott continues to lead, right? So afterwards, he's doing the work, with his Marines after he got out as a civilian. Still, Save the Brave, still doing work with nonprofits. He still continues to lead other Marines in civilian life when they're in civilian life. So it's not like he ever left the military, right? He's still doing the work. I think that's true leadership. And that's a part of the book I don't think people realize, that Scott's still out there doing the leadership work with his Marines, which I think is amazing work. So, but yeah, thanks really for your work and what you do. And thanks for having me today. For those of you guys who don't know, the story of Ryan Job, since I wrote A Warrior's Faith, I think Ryan Job has been in 6 or 7 other books, including Extreme Ownership by Jocko and Leif Babin. I think there's another one by Punisher, The Last Punisher by Kevin Lance. He was in a bunch of Dick Couch's former SEAL, who's written a few books, quite a few books about the Sheriff Ramadi. Ryan Job, for those folks that have watched the film American Sniper, there were a number of Ryan as the character Biggles. Him and Chris were on a rooftop. Chris Guy were on a rooftop in Ramadi, Iraq, and Ryan got, it was early morning, it was like 8 in the morning, and Ryan got shot in the face by a sniper. The bullet actually hit the upper receiver of his weapon. He was on I think a 240 Bravo, but hit the upper receiver of his weapon. Fragments of it shattered into the right side of his face and just completely tore open the right side of his face, knocked him out. I mean, Chris thought he was dead. I remember talking to Chris about it. Chris told me, I called over to him and, he wouldn't answer. So we were getting shot at now, and I knew that, he probably got shot by the sniper that I heard. And I was like, yeah, well, I'm either going to get shot up there on the roof. If I'm going to do that, I might as well go help Ryan. So we ran over, grabbed Ryan, turned him over, and Ryan just had this massive head wound from his lip to his forehead, and his eye was gone. Chris knew from the color of the blood that it was bad. He called down to the team that was working below. They were doing some clearing below, house to house. they all came up. They were getting shot at. They moved to a part of the roof where, you know, they wouldn't get shot. You know, they literally thought he was dead. I mean, Johnny Kim was the medic working on Ryan, and they're trying to bring him back. He was out late. Babin was holding his hand. Johnny told me the story. He's like, yeah, you know, Ryan just coughed up a bunch of blood and gore when I was working on him, and, you know, sat up or tried to sit up. And Leif had his hand. Leif was saying, come on, Ryan, you know, we're going to get you out of here. You're going to be all right, guy. Come on. Johnny had to say to Leif, because Leif was amazed that Ryan was actually alive, and sat up. And Johnny had to say to Leif, you know, hey, sir, please let go of his hand. We got to get it. And Ryan got up. He evacuated himself. Johnny and Ryan took a track over to Charlie Medical, which is at Camp Ramadi. Ryan went in for surgery there. You know, he had some swelling. It was pretty bad. Subsequently lost his sight, and he lost one eye and his other eye. And that's literally what happened to Ryan. I mean, people think he died right afterwards, but he ended up living in Arizona, not far from me. One of my buddies from college actually went through buds with Ryan. That's how I initially met him. And we just became good friends. He was a good guy. We trained together, climbed Mount Rainier, took him elk hunting. Just a really, really great guy. Just a hard charger.
Let me make sure that we're clear for the audience on this too. We're talking about you and Ryan Job, who's blind, going elk hunting and climbing Mount Rainier and all these things. Because that's important, because all of a sudden it's like, wait, his buddy from Buds, yeah. No. It's like, yeah, him too, but also this SEAL badass who, yeah, like you said, in the constraints of a movie, you've got to use certain people, certain characters to accomplish certain things. And so, yeah, Biggles has to die. But in this case, Ryan Job survives for a number of years and does incredible things for a guy that, for all intents and purposes, should be dead. It's, wow.
It's incredible. I mean, he climbed Rainier. I mean, if you ever seen Rainier, if you ever flown into Seattle, like you can't not miss it. It dominates the skyline. So he climbed Rainier completely unassisted, just climbed up Rainier, totally blind. A couple months later, he called me. He's like, hey, can you give me a ride to the airport? Because I would take him to the airport all the time, just drive him. So I was like, yeah, get in the car. I'm like, hey, where you headed? He was like, oh, elk hunting. So
of course
I was
you
like,
are.
hey, you know, you got to see him to hunt him, right? He's like, yeah, I got that figured out. And then
hand-to-hand
I was like,
combat.
hey, Ryan, I was like, Ryan, you may not want to tell the other hunters that you're blind. You know, those guys may, and, you know, a couple of days later, he just texted me this photo of this massive elk he missed with one shot. And, you know, they had brought a gun into Best Buy, got an internet camera, put it in the scope, attached that to like a laptop or something. I wasn't with him when this happened, but he tramped around the woods and shot an elk. He's just an incredible guy. Just like literally it was more of an inconvenience. Just a great guy. So yeah, then sadly he had some complications. The hospital had some complications, frankly, with his surgery. He went in for surgery in 2009, had some complications. It was a fairly egregious medical error, and Ryan passed as a result of the recovery process of surgery. And that's how Ryan
It's a
died.
bit of you just gave a spoiler for the book that's been out for a long time, but I'm telling you, if you haven't read A Warrior's Faith, the way you tell the story, Robert, is it's masterful. I mean, there's no other word I can use to describe it. I have a hard time reading books to begin with, just because I have short attention span theater, but yours is one of a handful of books that, like, I picked it up and I just couldn't put it down. And it's one of those things too, where you not only share Ryan's story, but so many other interesting facts that are very unique because they're seen through your lens, through someone that didn't serve in the military. And I think that's powerful, because when I was reading through this, it's like knowing you and having to personally know the author when you read someone's work is, it's really cool. I mean, to think like, oh, I could call this guy and ask him about chapter 6 and like, what did you mean when you said this?
Yeah.
But the way the story is told, and all of the other elements that, go into the story and then come out of the story as you read A Warrior's Faith are so powerful. And, one of the things that is uniquely, I don't know, I'm stumbling over my words here, but that connection you have with not only Ryan, but those he fought with, and then his family, like his brother, Aaron, and his mom, Debbie, right? And then that connection Talk about how they played a part in sharing this story, because I think that's really important to when you share a story like Ryan's, the family.
Yeah, I mean, it was, like I don't think civilians get this. I mean, like if you're a civilian, like you don't know how good you have it here in this country. You really don't. People say that all the time, but when you talk to guys that have served and you're sort of friends with them, you hear their stories and, you see how grateful they are that they're still alive. You know what I mean? And able to live in this country. It's really powerful. Like it's a great education. And what was really for me really interesting is that, I became good friends with Ryan's friends just because when you leave the military, you're sort of estranged from really the family, the second family you had. And I was like, it was just me and Ryan, right? Chris would come in, the guys would come in, but they'd be in for like a day and leave. So me and Ryan just became good friends. We became pretty close. And, when Ryan passed, I was, frankly, this is how it happened. I get to the hospital, right? And they're trying to tell us, I was with his wife and his mom. His mom had been in to Arizona. They were from Issaquah, Washington. And they tried to tell us that he aspirated on chewing tobacco. And I knew Ryan really well. We had spent a lot of time together, training together. He had swallowed chewing tobacco on occasion. It was just, it's Copenhagen without any problems whatsoever. And I knew that it would probably be pretty difficult for him to aspirate on chewing tobacco. So their story just didn't sound right. So I started to ask more, sort of very direct pointed questions about the process. And then I asked to see him. So I go into his hospital room and obviously, it was a really sad time for me personally, just seeing your friend there, and there's nothing you can do, but there's something I can do, and I need to figure out what that is because I'm not sure what it is. So I check his body, just to make sure that, where is the chewing tobacco, right? And there was nothing. I check his hands, and then his phone rings, and I open his bag, and in the bottom of his bag is literally a full tin of dip. It was not even opened, really. At that point, I just knew that the truth was not being told. So I called my attorney. I was like, look, somebody's not telling the truth here. I don't care who it is, but let's just, get to the bottom of it. Whoever you gotta sue, well, if they don't have a problem, then there shouldn't be a problem, right? So he ended up doing that. And I was pretty persistent about it I think, to a point where people were like, well, they're all professionals. This doesn't really usually happen. I'm like, look, my gut's telling me that something's not right here. Somebody's lying. I don't know who, but let's just find out. And if nobody's lying, then nobody's got a problem. We'll just trust and verify. So that resulted in a lawsuit, which resulted in the fact that, we did find out through an autopsy, which the hospital tried to deny, that Ryan, he didn't aspirate on chewing tobacco. The contents in his stomach wasn't chewing tobacco, and the fact that he did have 5 times the amount of fentanyl in his system needed to kill him. Somebody overdosed him. Whether it was intentional or unintentional, I don't know. So through that process, which was, fairly significant, about a year, I would keep in touch with everybody and just sort of get them updates. It was my lawyer who was the lawyer at least my contact with the lawyer was the lawyer for the case. So I kept in contact with all of them, and I would keep them updated. And they would ask me sort of, what's going on. I think Ryan's death was very hard on people because, Mark Lee was killed right after Ryan was. A lot of people literally risked. Scott, you know how bad Ramadi was. It was bad. People risked their lives going out in the bush every day. They were, once you left the wire, even the wire wasn't necessarily that safe. People risked their lives to go out to do work every day. And to have that happen to Ryan was really hard for people. So I just kept in touch with them to keep them, informed and give them my sort of thoughts on things. So we became very close. Me and Aaron, which is Ryan's brother, he's a sheriff, King County Sheriff up in Washington, came very close. When Aaron's third child, I'm his godfather. We just came really close because of that process I think what happened to Ryan, sort of just taking care of his family, taking care of what happened, because there was nobody really knew. No one really knew what to do. I was I don't think anybody's equipped. for that sort of, sudden death in a hospital as a result of a hospital error. And nobody was really equipped with it. And I think one of the saddest facts was Ryan's wife was pregnant with their first child and nobody knew it, but really me.
Wow.
So I became close to them because of this just circumstances and who Ryan was and our closeness. And he was just a really good guy. He just charged hard at everything. And to the fact that when one of the guys I mentioned, John Kim, who was the medic on the roof with Ryan, he literally saved Ryan's life. I had tracked down the physicians who worked on Ryan, who were at Camp Ramadi. I tracked them down in civilian life and asked them about, do they remember Ryan? The guy who worked on him remembered him. And, he said, yeah, it was probably the worst facial wound without being dead I've ever seen. And,
you said something really cool when we first started talking about the family was the military becomes a second family. And I always argue that sometimes for a lot of veterans, it's their first family because they come from so many different backgrounds demographically. A lot of them from traditionally broken homes, not a nuclear family, so they don't enjoy that type of love and support and structure that the military provides to people who serve. And in a case like Ryan or any of the other guys he was on the team with, especially in the SEAL community, it is super tight-knit community. I think that lends itself to the importance of sharing his story within a very exclusive community, and then the importance of involving the family, because it wasn't just, whether it's on the battlefield or in a hospital room, that one soldier or sailor dies, but they leave behind the families, and to stay connected to them, I think, is really powerful. And I think that's really, you mentioned how I stay connected and continue to lead. You do the same thing. And keeping these people connected through what we do and all the same people we know, I think has been something extremely gratifying. So,
yeah, I think as a civilian, it's, I hear people say all the time as civilians, oh, my only regret is that I didn't serve in the military. I'm like, wait a minute, hold on a second, let me break this down. You mean to say that that's, that's the only thing that, you think that's the only way you can serve your country or fellow man is to go into the military? Like, literally, that's it? And so I think, from my perspective, is that, so people ask, well, what's the VA doing? Or what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You can do something. And my sort of response to that was, I will be a conduit to resources on the outside world. So when you were out there fighting, right, I was building a network of resources, of people, of connections. Here's what I'll do. When you come back, I'll lend those resources to you to make sure that you're connected too. And I think that's really valuable, to have the right relationships in your life. If you don't, life gets very difficult very fast. And there's more wrong relationships than right relationships. So in coming back with Ryan, a lot of the other guys that I work with, they've spent the last decade or more, fighting wars, right? Estranged from family and friends, and they don't have the right trusted relationships to get them to the next level. But I'll just tell you something really interesting, You're right, Scott, that family dynamic of the military. My next upcoming book is with a guy named Mike Day, who I actually met through Ryan Jobe. And Mike was wounded, shortly after Ryan was. He was wounded in 2007. Ryan was wounded in 2006. Mike was a SEAL, spent many years there in the SEAL community. In 2007, he was wounded, shot 27 times, in a small room. Literally, 27 times. I mean, it's incredible. Literally, I was like, Mike, when I first heard the story, I didn't think it was true, but he was shot 27 times in a 10 by 10 foot room. 4 insurgents were in there with automatic weapons. He didn't get shot with he got shot with 7.62s from 10 feet away 27 times.
That's ridiculous. Where do you even put 27 bullets? I mean, 7.62 is no joke. Not any round is a joke, but that's a big bullet.
Oh yeah, right through him, literally. And while he's getting shot, he's shooting back at them. He killed all 4 of them, then got up and walked out of the room.
That's man business there.
Yeah, I mean, Mike is a badass. But so he gets flown from, it's really bad. He gets flown from Iraq to Germany, and he gets to Germany, and I talked to his casualty assistant officer who was working with Mike at the time, and he said, yeah, the door opens and it's Admiral McRaven. And he's like, comes in to check on Mike because when Mike Day was at Team 3, Admiral McRaven was, the XO at Team 3. And they knew each other. They used to surf all the time in California. So McRaven just walks in not like Admiral McRaven, but he's there as a team guy. And he's just asking Mike, hey, how is the care? How's Mike doing? Literally took off all the brass and just, treated Mike and his friend who was there accompanying with him, just like team guys, and wanted to know, what they needed. And that's, I think, unusual, right? Because that was family. It wasn't command. And that's how I saw what happened with Ryan when he died. They gathered around him like family. They wouldn't leave his widow's side. And it becomes the default family for many guys. And coming back when they leave the military, they don't have that. So, how are civilians going to contribute to meaningful ways in the veteran community? Maybe just being by conduits to resources.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think I don't know, when we were talking about the second book and telling Dave's story, I think we were introduced or something. I was telling Mike on, I don't know, some messenger, like, yeah, next time we're in a firefight, I'm standing right next to you because you're a massive bullet, man.
Yeah, no kidding.
Safest place on the battlefield.
Right.
Yeah, it's just an incredible story. But stories like that, I mean, I guess I've known Mike. In fact, I first met Mike. We went and climbed Mount Rainier in Ryan's honor in 2010, and that's when I first met Mike. Me and Mike climbed Rainier with another guy, Jay Redmond. We climbed Rainier in Ryan's honor. That's when I first met Mike. That was back, 8 years ago, almost 9 years ago now. That's when I first met him. But he's, just a really interesting guy. Spent 20 something years in the SEAL teams. That deployment, I think, was pretty dangerous. It was 2007 and pretty dangerous. And he was, he survived what is probably one of the most egregious sort of wounds or multiple wounds you get. I mean, he walked to a medevac. His story is, I won't give it all away, but his story is incredible. Literally, they're shooting at him. He gets shot in the gun while they're shooting at him. He has to, clear his weapon and go back to work while they're shooting at him. But guys like that.
You talking about Jay Redmond now?
No, that's Mike Day. He literally was on the ground getting shot, but Jay Redmond was wounded going after the guys that shot up Mike Day.
Yeah, and again, there's another great story that's out there, Trident by Jason Redmond. That's another great story of Navy SEALs, of course.
You were saying something earlier that's really pretty important for folks to realize is those of us that go outside the wire a lot spend our time focused there, and that's where our attention needs to be. I'm out talking to villagers, Scott's commanding Marines, trying to take objectives and deciding where to park missiles and stuff like that. You don't often come back with a powerful professional network. And so if you want to get out of that line of work and you don't necessarily want to work for a contract company or whatever, it is extraordinarily hard to start to rebuild that network and to convince folks that you actually have some pretty good skills to apply where it's not just like, yeah, you should guard stuff. Talk to me a little bit about the kind of, as a civilian talking to these guys, as you start to realize the qualities that are there, like you got people that are operational experts, people that are, there's so many different areas that a veteran has capacity in. You can be on the teams, but think like a special forces team. You've got a demo expert, and that person can literally build a house, build you a bridge. They can look at plans. They can handle budgets. I mean, there's so many different things. What kind of lessons did you learn from talking to all these people that you've interacted with in terms of the skills that they brought that were very transferable, yet nobody knows about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question because I think a lot of guys in the military make great entrepreneurs because they don't look at risk the way other people do. They say, what if I don't do this versus what if I do this? They work to accomplish missions no matter what. Sometimes you see guys put maybe, don't put, like one guy, he was a sniper, and he put on his resume as like sniper, and he's like, is that, and I was like, well, it is transferable, like, but I don't think anybody's going to need a sniper at IBM or like, one of those places. But I think the skill set that almost everyone comes back with is leadership, self-leadership, and these components of leadership. They have physical leadership, meaning they always stay in pretty good shape, like they're always working out. So the physical leadership, mental leadership, they're mentally prepared to go and lead. Emotional leadership, most of the time they're under control. They may feel something, but they don't say it. So they're emotionally able to lead themselves. Social leadership. Typically, they're socially good leaders, right? They get along with everybody. There's no ego. They check it at the door. Spiritual leadership, some of them do struggle spiritually with some things, but most of them get it. And then I think what makes them great staff people, employees, entrepreneurs is by and large that all those things combined create this idea of trust. You can trust them that they're going to show up on time, do the work, get it done. And if you ask me, like, what is the real currency of leadership? It's trust. And I say this to guys all the time. I say this to people all the time. And recently I said this to somebody, and they were leading this organization that had a lot of turnover. And I said, hey, and I just got to let you know, people, they fire themselves. What I meant to say to them, and I hope he heard it, was that, people fire their bosses, and they fire their bosses because they don't trust them. And that's what the problem is that many people who come out of the military, look, I mean, in the SEAL teams, like I never been in the military, but everyone tells me, hey, we get to choose who we go in a gunfight with. Like, you don't trust somebody, you don't have to go in the gunfight with them. I mean, it's pretty like standard in the SEAL teams, but it's the same place in the workplace. If you don't trust somebody in the workplace, you just don't want to work with them, especially if they're your boss, your leader. And what I think guys who get out of the military, what they're able to sort out very quickly is who in the organization they trust and don't trust. What they bring to the organization is a lot of leadership skills to get it done. And if they don't know it, they'll figure out how to get it done, or they'll ask how to get it done, which I think are great skills, because you can train anybody to be an engineer, but you can't train everybody to be a leader. That you got to have that, or you got to at least come with the willingness to want to be a leader. So those are the things I think. So transitioning guys up, most of those guys they're great leaders. They work hard at things. They may not have the specific skill set, like the engineering skill set, the financial skill set. All those things you can learn. In fact, I argue that they're going to change every 18 months anyway, but you want to find people that are really good leaders, that are empathetic, that understand sort of how to get things done, and tap them. And that's what I think.
Or having people that are willing to ask how to get it done. I think that's not something that's usually advertised, being in the military, of the quality of humility and knowing what you don't know. But this is kind of a peek behind the curtain in the military.
Yeah,
there's no attribution for saying I don't know how to do this, and if
right.
you don't, you just say that, but you feel safe among your peers exposing that lack of technical or tactical ability, and somebody is there that's done it before you, and they'll show you. So you enjoy that in the military, but when you get out, if you got a guy like that in your organization who's willing to say, you know what, I've never done that before, you need to train me how to do that, or send me to school to do that, or show me how to do it, but I'll get it done.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of people in the private sector that are willing to out themselves.
There's also, because I worked in the private sector, and one of the things that you get in the military, and not that the military is perfect, there's plenty of things, but someone like Scott, who's a commander, as he's in a combat position, trying to take down objectives and do all the things he's trying to do, he's also mentoring his officers that are junior to him. He's making sure that careers are being managed properly. He's holding people accountable. There's a lot of things going on. If you go to the civilian side and you ask someone, hey, what's your next promotion? Where are you headed next? And I'm surprised at the number of folks who are like, I don't know. No one spends any time developing me. So how do you lead someone if they're like just sitting there waiting to be led, like no one's bothering to tell them? Or that, like you said, we've had Robin Dreek on the show. He's the master of trust. If no one trusts you above you, then you're not going to put your all into it. You're not going to give everything because, as far as you know, especially in corporations, and granted the military doesn't work this way, you might be given a box the next week, be like, hey, we decided to cut you loose. We want you all in, but we're not even going to tell you that you're on the chopping block. That's That's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, I mean, I tell guys all the time, look, you're in for a 2-year assignment. Likely, the military would be the longest career employment you'll ever have. After that, you may do 2-year assignments every place you go, because that's just the way things are now. I mean, you may not have a career outside. You may be 2-year assignments at even if you're not a contractor, just a W-2 straight employee, you'll probably just do 2-year assignments everywhere, because that's how fast things change.
Well, what do you think about that as far as redefining what a career is? Most people think, well, my career is 20 years. My career is 10 years at this. But if you've achieved, I think we've talked about this, like if you've achieved all the goals you want within 2 years, that counts. And every time you transition, it should count for something. Do you agree with that?
I totally agree. And, and if you're gaining new, transferable and tangible skills, and you think you've sort of you've already reached your goals, there's no place for you to go, and you're getting bored, now's the time to look. Now it's time to move. Or the organization will get sold or merged or something like that. So likelihood is, you go hard for 2 years, keep your head down. After 2 years, pick your head up and see what happens. And then that's what's gonna, I think even now with technology, with changes we have now, I think that's what the reality is. I don't think even kids getting out of college these days or getting out of school, things are changing so fast. It may not make sense to get a 4-year degree in anything, because by the time you finish school, it's obsolete. So
yeah, that's an important message too. That I think for anyone who's senior level, like guys our age, like if they can't wrap their head around that concept, that those traits that you bring people in to employ and make a successful business. Now, the longevity of the business may be longer than 2 years, but how to leverage people's skills in there could be relatively shorter. But we went from an era, just for comparison's sake.
This episode of the Break It Down Show is brought to you by Lions Rock Productions.
That's us.
We publish, evaluate, and develop podcasts just like this one, consult others to build their own, and create associated content and content marketing strategies.
So if you're launching or expanding your social media presence, your business or your personal brand, or if you just want to take your media presence to the next level,
reach out to us on Twitter
at Pete A. Turner
or at JohnLG69
at the Break It Down Show.
There's 1,000 ways to get a hold of us.
Now enjoy the show.
Longer than 2 years, but how to leverage people's skills in there could be relatively shorter. But, we went from an era, just for comparison's sake, of getting a message across from it had to be a book or it had to be an article. And now you can get your message out 30 times a day through 26 characters on Twitter. And that evolution and that mindset, if you're not willing to adapt at the senior level right now and understand that, I think those companies are the ones that are going to be taken over and really run the risk of failure long term.
Yeah, I mean, I think that these days you're going to have to be able to. Someone asked me, okay, so what's the skill sets you're going to need? You're definitely going to need to be able to communicate. You're going to need to be able to communicate. If you can't communicate, you're going to have a real problem in the career. Building a career, and that's both verbal and written communication. You're also going to have to understand that technology is changing literally, like we're doubling paces every 18 months. So you're going to have to understand that what's available today, 18 months, will be completely obsolete. You're going to have to constantly adapt, to learn. You're going to have to be willing to learn new things all the time. I think if you do that, you're going to be fine. In fact, I think you'll be very successful. It's the ones that say, well, this is the way we've done it all along. I don't want to really do it a different way. Well, I think, you're going to be left behind. I mean, that's just the fact.
So how did you get there? How did you gain that wisdom? Like, tell everybody, how you got there to really understand this, like what your background is from, the private sector to, becoming a best-selling author and working everything you do with, your charity. How did you get there?
Yeah, so I was, I graduated from college in the 80s, right? Like the last year of the 80s, and, back then people had careers. I was a political science major, which, by the way, is not very useful, right? There's no science in politics, right? And, I ended up working for a United States senator, and I did military and veteran constituent concerns, right? So any issue that a military veteran had, I would just handle it. It was apolitical, so it wasn't like, you're a Republican or Democrat. Back then it was very different. So I ended up I was staff assistant to United States Senator Ted Kennedy. Worked in Boston for 5 years doing that work and really enjoyed it. I worked with the Marines. I worked with, I worked with all branches of the military. Usually, things as mundane as getting a DD-214 to really some egregious cases of injustice where, malpractice and things like that. But nonetheless, really enjoyed the work. Had enough of it after 5 years. Didn't want to go to Washington, D.C. and definitely did not want to be in politics. So, I ended up going into investment banking and spending, almost 20 years as an investment banker. Worked in Boston, New York, and came to Arizona to do an MBA. Ended up staying in Arizona, really liking it in Arizona. My last stop on that food chain, the investment banking food chain, I was at, vice president. Merrill Lynch had set up this group. I was vice president of business financial services for Merrill Lynch, which is now part of Bank of America. I left there right before the crash in '06. But, I wanted to do something totally different. So I had, during that time, like from like '03, '04, I started getting really sort of, I just needed to do something different. I knew I needed to do something different. I didn't know really what it was. So I started I was an athlete in college. I played football. Went to Boston College. I was a walk-on football player there. I always stayed sort of like doing athletics and things like that. So I started doing Ironman triathlon in '03 and really liked it and decided in '06 that I had this crazy idea that I was going to, set up a workplace wellness company, using technology to bring, distill sort of some critical tenets of Ironman training, like heart rate zone training and meal planning into the sort of non-athlete world and do it in a workplace wellness program. So I literally, like one day I came home, I was like, hey, you know what, honey? I got good news and bad news. She's like, well, what's the, good news? I was like, well, I started my own company. She's like, oh, great. What's the bad news? I was like, well, I took 100% pay cut. She's like, oh, yeah. Great. So I started this technology-based company that was literally like almost an overnight success. One of those things that took years. We did really well. In 2012, I had an opportunity to we managed the President's Challenge, which is an initiative of the White House. Did really well, but I was always chasing money and chasing technology because you had to update your browser system as soon as a new browser came out, and people couldn't use the system, and it was just. So I decided after being, I started off as sort of the managing partner, then I ended up being the CTO, then the CEO. I had an opportunity to get out in 2012, and in 2012, 2013, pay all my investors, get out, and sort of start anew. And, I was ready for that. I said, okay, I'll do it. I got out in 2012. Now, Ryan had passed, and I was really struggling with that his whole issue of how he died, what happened, really struggling. I'd been doing some work with a nonprofit, that assisted wounded veterans. And I just decided one day, you know what? I need to tell this story. Chris Kyle had told the story, but he had said that Ryan died on the operating table, which wasn't true. There was a lot of, sort of people, what happened to Ryan? I heard he died on the operating table and all this other stuff. I just wanted to set the record straight. So literally, I had kept a journal and I just went back and I rewrote, the manuscript for A Warrior's Faith. This is interesting for anyone who wants to write a book. I just went and wrote a book. I hadn't had any contact, anything. I just went and wrote it. I had reached out to somebody that I knew who had offered a book deal for me to do something in the wellness community. And I had sent the manuscript to them and they wanted to do something, but it was turned into like a weight loss book. I had no interest in doing that, right? So I was like, I'm not interested in doing this. So I said, look, but here's what I am interested in doing. And it ended up being the manuscript for A Warrior's Faith. And they asked me if it was true. I said yes. And a week or two later, I got an agent to call me. They looked at it. I got signed by an agent. And then like a month later, I got an offer from Harper Collins, which is literally unheard of, right? So people ask, how'd you do it? And I said, you know what? I was really lucky. I'd like to say I'm talented, but I was really lucky to get that. So here's what happened. I don't think I've ever said this to anybody. Like, so I finished the manuscript, right? And, and Scott said, like, you didn't want to put it down. And I didn't want people to put it down. So the book A Warrior's Face is about 42,000 words. However, the day or the Friday before it was due, it was 86,000 words, almost 90,000 words, right? So I call my editor and I said, hey, Kristen, can I make some changes? I know it's due today. Can I have till Monday to make some changes? And she said, yeah. And I just knew something was wrong with it. And I didn't quite know what it was. It was like it was sort of like I left the house, but I forgot something. I didn't know what it was, that type of feeling. So I read it again. So this is late Friday night. I'm supposed to have it into Harper Collins I was supposed to have it on Friday. They gave me till Monday. All of a sudden it occurs to me, oh man, I got to change this whole thing. I literally have to rewrite this whole thing. I can't submit this. And so I write Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I don't sleep. I just drink coffee and rewrite the entire manuscript in 3 days. And I cut it in half from like 86,000 words to 42,000, whatever it was. And on Monday, like, I just hit send and send it. I don't call anybody. I don't say anything. And they've already seen the 86,000 word one, right? They've already gone through it.
Yeah.
And so I get a call from like the CEO at the time, or I forget what it was, I forget what it was. But anyway, I got a call. They're like, hey, what happened? And I was like, I read it on Friday night. I just didn't feel good about it. And I needed to make some changes. They're like, obviously you did. I said, yeah, I figured that this is my only opportunity and I need to use everything, the length of the book, the content of the book, the cover, everything to convey a message of a feeling of a life cut short. And I can't do that with more words, so I have to use less. So I cut it in half. This is the final version. I'm standing by this. And they're like, are you sure? Now, I wasn't sure, right? But I always say that I am, So, I was like, I'm absolutely sure. There's no question in my mind. And they're like, okay, great. And then like 2 weeks later, the book came out. They didn't change anything. They took what I gave them and sent that through. And that's what got published. I literally cut it in half because I felt like I needed to use the entire book to convey this idea of a life cut short. And I couldn't do it by like I had to cut things out. I had to streamline it to give you this one feeling at the end of the book. Like wow, that's it.
I want to back up a little bit in that. First off, that's a ballsy move. And that comes from somewhere inside of you. And there's something that, your gut or your intuition or whatever it's going to be. But are you comfortable with those kind of things, or was this something you knew but couldn't put your finger? Can you describe what you were sensing before you decided to chop that book in half and rewrite it in a weekend?
Yeah, so I think every writer has this. You know if it's good or if it's not, or at least you get a sense for it. It's really scary to be a writer. It really is. I mean, you're putting out. I mean, Scott, I don't know about you, but I mean, you're putting out like really, people are going to criticize it, right? They pay their $20 and they can go and put a 1 on Amazon, right? If they don't like it,
That's what I do.
But I had, this was different because it was a guy that I really respect and loved. You know what I mean? He was just an awesome guy. I wanted his legacy. I wanted it to mean something, to his friends, to me, to the world. I wanted it to mean something of what he did in his short life. So I didn't want to have, I didn't want people to say, well, I couldn't get through the book, or, it was too long, or, I only wanted great reviews of it. And I wanted people to be left at the end. I wanted them to feel like I wanted more. And, so I decided that, okay, the worst case scenario is that the publisher comes back to me and says no. but I'm sure about this. And I know that if I don't honor Ryan in this way, that, you know, whatever comes out of the book, that people will be like, well, it was a good book, but I didn't really get it. So I wanted to make sure that I did it right. So yeah, it was just this gut feeling that said, okay, just do this, cut it in half. No matter what, just cut it in half. There were some stories I could have put in that would have built some, character of Ryan, but I think leaving them out built more character. Just leaving them out. There were things that, you know, him and I did that were fun and funny, and things that he did that were really, I think, amazing. But I put enough in that you knew who he was, but not enough in that you got bored of his life or him. So, yeah, I mean, it just comes. And when you sit down to write a book, it's one of the most masochistic process you ever go through. I mean, it's a lot of work to write a book.
How hard is it? I mean, you hear this adage a lot amongst writers, is write about what you know, because then it'll be great writing. So how hard was it for you to write someone else's story?
I think about that a lot. In some ways, I think it's easier for me to write, or it was easier for me to write Ryan's story. First of all, he wasn't here. It was my perspective. It was more about Ryan's story and our friendship. So it was easy to do. I think for me, it's personally, it's easier for me to write someone else's story because I see it from their perspective, but I also bring my views into it, because it's hard to see, I think, for guys like, maybe Mike Day or others. I see things that they don't necessarily see about themselves. For example, I'll just give you one really good example. One day Mike Day was talking to me about something, and he was describing like this firefight they were in, and he was describing he was telling me like, oh, they were shooting over our heads, and they were shooting, 5.56s over our heads, and then they started shooting, and it occurred to me like, wait a minute, Mike is getting shot at. I don't know where he was, but I forgot about all the other stuff, but he was describing a gunfight like a sommelier would describe wine. You know what I mean? Like, it was weird. And just listening to him describe, like, the sound of the crack of a 7.62 is different from the sound of a crack of a 5.56 and a 9, right? It's coming over your head. It occurred to me, like, I stopped kind of not listening to the story, but I started thinking about, wow, this is Mike in a gunfight. He's not even thinking about getting shot. He's thinking about where the bullets are coming from, what type of bullets so in that way, it's easier for me to describe things because I'm objective about what Mike's talking about. So it's easier for me to write from an objective standpoint than a subjective standpoint. So it's easier for me to write, I think, other people's story than to write my own. I don't know, my story, whatever that is, it all seems kind of boring to us as when you live it, right?
Well, you could, you still got the 5-day fast by Robert Vera in you. That's still there.
Yes, your fitness.
5 Days Juice Fast by Bob Vera.
In 180, this is going to be your thing. Health and wellness, and in less than 183 pages.
Yeah.
Every book is shorter than the next.
Yeah, just literally just one page, but yeah,
eat less.
That's it.
Really
like
big
that's
font.
what, people ask all the time. What's the key to it? You can't out exercise your fork, right? Eat less and move more. That's how you lose weight. That's it. I mean, literally.
Hold on, I'm writing that down.
That's it. Like, you don't have to do much more. Like, just do that. But anyway, I really enjoy writing other people's stories because I think that I have a perspective that they wouldn't necessarily think of. I really enjoy that. And, so Mike's book, I'm really interested in seeing how that comes out. And I think we'll do two books, one on his memoir and then one on resiliency, like how he got through a lot of the things he got through.
So you're like the official biographer of Navy SEALs. Does anyone ever call you like a SEAL groupie?
You know what? It's weird because I never knew these guys as they were Navy SEALs, right? I just never knew any of them. And, even Ryan, I didn't know as a SEAL. I only met him afterwards. And So no, I like people ask, like, how do you know these guys? It's strange. I really don't even know how I know them all. Like I'll meet them at an event or something like that, or one of the guys I worked with on a book project, Rich Peters, was the first Navy SEAL ever selected for SEAL Team 6. He was with SEAL Team 2, and then when the commander of SEAL Team 2, which is a guy named Richard Marcinko, started SEAL Team 6, he picked Rich to be on that team. And I worked with Rich on a book project. That story is, did I ever tell you that story?
No, you never laid that one.
That one is one I actually didn't believe. So I get a call from this guy, Rich Peters. He tells me a story that he was in Libya during the time of Gaddafi was deposed, right? He was doing some work over there, long story of how he got over there. Anyway, Gaddafi thinks he's a spy. He tries to leave the country and they pick up Rich and they throw him in prison. They have no idea where Rich is. His family has no idea where he is. He's been, they're going to use Rich potentially as a pawn. NATO has imposed a blockage. There's no way that he can get out. And no one knows where he is. And everybody thinks he's dead. So the SEAL community is involved. They're going to try to something together to come find him. All of a sudden, Rich's wife's name is Rich Peters, gets a call from a journalist named James Foley. Do you guys remember James Foley?
No.
James Foley was a journalist who got his head cut off by ISIS.
Oh, right. Okay.
Worked for Global Post. So his wife, Rich Peters, gets a call from James Foley saying, hey, your husband's still alive. I know where he is. So I hear the story from Rich. He's like, yeah, so I'm in prison, and one day I've been there for 6 months, and just literally probably lost 100 pounds already. And we just literally tortured, beaten, trying to get me to confess to something. And he's 62 years old at the time. He's like, all of a sudden from the 220 outlet on the wall, I hear this, hello, is anybody in there? And, he's like, Rich calls back. Yeah, my name is Rich Peters. Who's this? And he's like, James Foley. I'm a journalist. And Rich, I'm Rich Peters. I'm an American. I'm here. And,
it's crazy.
Rich says that, he's like, hey, Jim, tell me what happened. So Jim tells him that what happened, that Jim was taken prisoner with 2 other journalists. And he's been held by Gaddafi. Jim asked Rich a bunch of questions about, did he go to court? Rich was never seen. No one knew where he was. Anyway, Rich says to Jim Foley, hey, look, Jim, you're getting out of here. I'm not. They're probably going to kill me here, but I'm not. But here's what you're going to do. You're going to remember some personal details about me, and as soon as you get out, as soon as you get outside the country, you're to call my wife, tell her where you are, and tell them to send the boys. So Rich Peters makes Jim Foley remember his social security number, all his personal details, and his wife's phone number. Jim gets out. He gets into Tunisia. His first call he makes is to Katie Peters and says, hey, your husband, Rich Peters, United States Navy SEAL, SEAL Team 6, social security number 02395, whatever it is, I know where he is. And she's like, really? So they end up finding Rich Peters. Rich, they say, we know you have Rich. You know you're holding him. This is to Gaddafi's people. They deny it at first. They say, look, we know where he is. We got all this information. Then they admit to it and they say, yeah, we're going to hang him tomorrow in Green Square for treason or either traitor or something like that. I don't know what it was. A spy. Tomorrow comes, they start bombing. The United States starts bombing Tripoli, or the NATO starts bombing Tripoli. They start bombing around the place around the prison. All of a sudden Rich tells me everybody leaves the prison. So Rich is left in the prison. Now he thinks he's going to leave him there to die. So he says, so I just have this thought, I pray, I have this thought. All of a sudden, this thought comes to me in a prayer almost. It's like, kick down the door. So he's like, I'm in prison for 6 months. I've lost 100 pounds, and I get this idea, I'm going to kick down the door. So I just start kicking the door, and wouldn't you know it, after about the 30th kick, the whole frame, the door just blows out of the cell. I'm like,
wow.
You kidding? So I don't believe it, right? I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, Rich, right? Cause I don't really know Rich that well, you gotta be kidding me. So I Google search James Foley, Rich Peters, and Global Post pops up. And James Foley wrote for Global Post. And it's Return to Libya. Jim Foley actually goes back to Libya, finds Rich Peters, and there's a picture of them at the prison with the door that Rich kicked out of his prison cell. I mean, incredible story. So I meet these guys. I mean, just through sort of the SEAL community is really well connected. So they kind of all know of or know each other. So that's how I kind of connect with them all. And I live in Arizona, so a lot of them come through here. So we just meet up, and they all kind of, one guy will know Ryan, one guy will know, Jay or some other guys. And so that's how I connect with a lot of those guys.
We could spend a whole hour just talking about the guys we all know together and how immense the network is and how things we do, not only on Pete's show, but the things you're doing with, Patriot Authors Magazine and Eagle Rise Speaker Bureau. It's an amazing network.
Yeah.
Of people helping people. And it's not exclusive to veterans. That's what's cool with what you got going on is, you share the love too. And I think it's a common theme whenever I'm on the show with Pete.
Yeah.
How cool this network is, because it's an important message I'd like to tell people is like, if there's any listeners listen to the show around the world and they need help with something, just ask.
Yeah.
Just send me an email, go to echoandramadi.com, send me an email, and I respond. And if I can help, I'll help. And it's that easy.
And you probably know someone that can help them, or, so at least someone to continue their quest. Yeah, totally.
I go, do you know Robert? And then I do. Yeah. Sure.
This is the thing too. So election day is about to happen here in about a week, and everybody's always like, vote, vote, vote. And yes, of course, everybody should vote, but fuck that. You can do so much more and impact people's lives, impact your own life. Get involved, whether or not you're donating your time to an organization like Save the Brave, or you're getting involved somewhere else, like whatever you're passionate about. There's literally a club that raises canaries for show. You can improve your life. You can improve the lives of others by just simply getting, instead of like focusing on negative stuff, if you don't like the government, go to it and get involved in it and start to change it from the inside. There's all kinds of ways. You don't got to be elected. There's people that need help. There's volunteer time. So that's my big soapboxy thing as we hit up on election day. And I've got a political scientist here on the show with me. Get fucking involved. Value your rights more than just fucking voting. Get out there and go get involved and help someone. That's my big speech as we round the corner here. Robert, when's the new book coming out?
Probably 2020. I think we're on that schedule. So we're on 2020. Of course, A Warrior's Faith is still available on Amazon. And then Mike Day's new book is untitled, but I'm sure, I'll get you information on that when it does come out. But, and of course, Echo and Ramadi. But I would like to give a plug for the Patriot Authors Network. It's a network of 30 like-minded authors, many in the military, many not, but amazing stories. We all help to promote each other. So the Patriot Authors Network is housed at American Patriot Unsung magazine. 30 authors, including guys like Scott McEwen, Scott Huesing, Josh Montz, Jay Redman, Mike Day will be there eventually. But amazing group of
Sean Parnell,
Sean Parnell.
Yeah, Sean Parnell. Man of War just came out. Great book.
Selfless leaders and just incredible stories. I mean, like incredible stories, very well written. So, but a great network of people. So I'll let you know when the new one's coming out. But thank you.
Yeah, you can find more on Robert at A Warrior's Faith, and you can also check out his book on Amazon, A Warrior's Faith. Real simple. You can get him on Facebook. He's really approachable. He wants to talk to you. You guys should talk to him. And buy these books. If you've read the book for yourself, get it for somebody else as a gift. Here's how you help out. If you're going to buy the book, go into Amazon, rate it, and review it. That is what helps drive these things and lets Robert go out and tell these incredible stories. Because if no one else has thanked you today, Robert, I'm going to thank you for doing that because, there's 1,000 more guys that have done incredible things, whether or not they've been shot 27 times or, they've lost their sight or they just went out and like Ryan Weaver, used the incredible loss that he's felt to put himself on stage and sing country songs for PBR fans all over the nation. And it's just incredible. So thank you for doing that.
It's my honor. Literally, my honor to be able to do it, to have the privilege to be able to do it. So it's my honor. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to talk. I know we can chat like schoolgirls for hours. Me and Robert get on the phone. So it's always good talking to you, man. We always got 1,000 ideas of great things we want to do, and you're doing it. And we get bogged down in that a lot. Is we want to do so much, do more, and do more, and do more. And people like Robert and Pete and Nick Velez and Josh and everybody, man, by sharing stories and helping out, they're doing something. But guys that do that also feel like they need to be doing more, and I think that's what drives us. And you're definitely one of those guys, man. I'm very proud to have you in my network, and call you not only a fellow author but friend, most importantly.
Same here, brother. Same here. No, it's awesome. But thank you, guys. I really appreciate the time with you, and I'd love to do it again. There's some other stuff I got coming up, and hopefully in the next couple months we can do it. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
No.
Okay.